Largest modern Hindu temple outside India opens in US. Next Shark. Baps Swaminarayan Akshardham, the largest Hindu temple constructed outside India in modern times, op. End its doors on Sunday in Robbinsville, New Jersey. A sacred dedication. Devotees conducted a 9-day celebration commencing on Sept. 30 and culminating in the grand dedication ceremony on October 8, under the guidance of Mahant Swami Maharaj. During the ceremony, Swami Maharaj conducted the Pran Pratishtha, a sacred ritual that sanctified the temple amid traditional ceremonies and rituals. Below are your comments. I had visited India many times and I worked there for 12 years. India has largest number of churches in the world. About 20 million were built in the 70 years. New churches are underway when the count. Right people allowed these constructions to happen and running, they didn't. Why we hear Maki. Christians can build mega churches. Muslims can build mega mosque. Sunday morning if you turn on TV all the evangelists, Protestants, Methodists, Pentecosts preach and make money and spend it own Rolls-Royce, Rolex watches, mega mansions, fleet of jets. But if Indians build a temple it is a crime. Hindus overall are the most peaceful migrants living in many places. Unlike the violent, intolerant and most uncivilized Islamists who demand their faith should be followed by non-believers. Even the missionaries are no less and have built thousands of churches in India and do covert conversion. How many Hindus in America or even in the whole world? Does India want to spread its influence through temples? What a country! Religion is higher than everything. India will never be able to catch up with China this way. China's central government only believes in education and science. It won't speak. Next news. Under heavy bombing, Palestinians in Gaza move from place to place, only to discover nowhere is safe. Associated Press. Over 180,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are packed into United Nations shelters as Israeli warplanes pound the tiny territory of 2.3 million people after their Hamas militant rulers launched an unprecedented weekend attack on Israel. Among them is 27-year-old Sabrine al-Attar. Grabbing her children, al-Attar rushed to one of the dozens of shelters set up in schools run by the UN. Agency for Palestinian Refugees in Gaza City. Below are your comments. Israel cannot allow Hamas to get away with bleep. Gazans support Hamas and must suffer the consequences. They will. If you can't live in peace, then you live in war. Israel will suffer but will survive and prevail. Gazans will still be fifth-generation suffering. What did Hamas think it was going to accomplish by raiding Israel? How would this help the Palestinians? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Hamas long ago gave up caring about the Palestinians and now just does whatever Iran tells it to. What goes around comes around. Had the Palestinians moved to organize and oust Hamas and rid themselves of terrorists and got a respectable leader, this territory arrangement could have worked. They all could have lived peacefully. But they didn't, and no one succeeded in giving them a strong alternate voice. They aren't innocent. Hamas started a war which will live in the history of the Palestinian people. Its well-planned surprise, say an initial success, are on the front pages of every nation in the world. Whoever planned it, Russia, Hezbollah, or Iran, have created a disaster and hung Hamas and he. Next news. Republican candidates seize on Hamas attack on Israel to hit Biden. The Hill. Republican presidential candidates are laying blame on the Biden administration after the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack on Israel over the weekend. Many of the GOP White House contenders are linking the deadly attack with a recent prisoner exchange between the U.S. and Iran, a historical supporter of Hamas, which resulted in the. Below are your comments. I believe that Hamas had meticulously planned this for a considerable period of time, and President Biden is not to blame for it. This was not a sudden decision made without consideration for the circumstances, otherwise the casualties would have been less severe, as Israel leaders would have been. How come Republicans struggle so hard with the concept of unfreezing versus paying? It's not like they took a bunch of taxpayer money and gave it to Iran. If Rona wants to blame Biden, she can also blame Trump for pulling us out of the Iran nuclear agreement. And, because they're never going to work. Who listens to the Republicans anymore? The ones left in the party are a cult. They speak Trump and only Trump. They blame, make fun of, and criticize under all conditions and situations. They provide no help, no answers, and no support to anyone. At this point they can't even pick a leader foe. MAGA is all about retreating from the world stage and other countries' problems. Don't get involved, don't send forces, let one fend for themselves. What can they criticize? Why is the leaderless house a problem now that some other country is having an emergency? Are these candidates now ready to? Next news. Iran sends deadly message to Biden with Hamas attack on Israel. The Hill. Regardless of whether Iran plotted and ordered the massive Hamas attack against Israel over the weekend, Tehran's backing and support for the Palestinian militant group sends a clear and defiant message to Washington. The U.S. has yet to confirm a direct involvement from Tehran in the operation, but officials acknowledge Iran's are indirectly complicit in training, funding and. Below are your comments. If Israel finds out Iran is behind this attack, Iranians need to find their bomb shelters. Israel doesn't care about Middle East friends because they are so few. They would rather send a stark message to an aggressor, and Iran might just find out what that message is. Just a month ago, Biden released $6 billion in frozen funds to Iran. Funds frozen by the previous administration. Without those funds, Iran can't fund terrorist organizations. Now, Iran tells Biden to go pound Saharan sand. Interestingly, we haven't heard from Biden in 3 days. Any other prezi? The key to Iran is to support its internal freedom movements. Most Iranians don't want the mullahs ruling their lives. If the mullahs get less comfortable at home, they will be less able to support militants elsewhere. As for Gaza, I think most Palestinians do not want a war with Israel, they just no U.S. president has developed a policy to manage and contain Iran's regional role. That is untrue. Trump's policies had Iran well in check. Biden lifted the sanctions on Iran, and this is what we get: destruction and terror. If we go to war with Iran, this time do not hold back. Level it to the ground. Next news. Fake White House document distorts U.S. aid to Israel. AFP. The United States has pledged support to Israel after some 1,000 militants with the Palestinian Group Hamas launched an unprecedented, multi-pronged attack on the country, plunging the region into war. But a supposed White House document allocating $8 billion in military assistance is fake. The image circulating online appears to show a doctored version of a July 2023 memo announcing $400 million in aid to Ukraine. Below are your comments. You mean things you read on the internet are not true? Really? Meanwhile, in this critical time, the U.S. House of Representatives is more or less stalled because of having no speaker, and many branches of the armed services are almost leaderless because of the anti-CS of Senator Tuberville. And yet Republican politicians are still arguing that the U.S. is a world leader. Anyone calling a group of bleeping thugs who bleep unarmed civilians, including many women and child, bleep and abducted teenage girls militants might as well be considered complicit in their crime. I guess Timothy McVeigh was an incendiary protester and the 9/11 butchers were flying Misker. Stories like this one are intended to cover for the fact that the Biden administration reversed a Trump policy and restored over $230 million in aid to Palestinians and Hamas in 2021. Do you think that money was used for food and medical supplies, or did it go for weapons and into pockets of circa? Why would anyone believe what the AFP said? Follow the money. Next news. Leaderless U.S. House braces for chaotic speaker election. AFP. Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives began the search for a new leader Monday as the crisis in Israel injected fresh urgency into their struggle to heal the party's bitter internal divisions. The ouster also raised serious questions over the future of U.S. military aid to Ukraine and, more immediately, over Congress's ability to respond quickly to a crisis like the weekend attack on Israel. by Hamas militants. Below are your comments. This is just further proof that the GOP lack the moral integrity to govern. Perhaps once they have satisfied their infatuation with what lies under children's clothes, banning books, fondling dates in front of children, giving tax breaks to the rich and defending SCOTUS membe, are being overtly on the simple choice. Liz Cheney. But that won't happen because far too many of the GOP hate her for telling the truth about January 6. God permanently ban, bar, block, prohibit, Republican House speakers. Irreversible implosion abides and dwells with and within the conservative, GOP, MAGA, Republicans. 2024 Suomi Deep Blue Wave Steamroll 2024, comprehensively deep blue wave steamroll Cleanhausen. D. Senate of GOP, Republicans. Please wait a moment. It's not just the leaderless House. Tuberville continues to hold military promotions. Rand Paul is holding up all appointments of Ambass. Adores we sure could use those political holds to be lifted. If ever there was a time to have an ambassador, it is now. Next news. Russia claims "neo-Nazis were at wake for Ukrainian soldier in village cafe where missile bleep 52." Associated Press. Russia's UN ambassador alleged Monday that neo-Nazis and military-age men were at the wake for a Ukrainian soldier in a village cafe where a missile last week bleeped 52 people, even as Security Council members are. He retorted that Russia was responsible for starting the war and committing crimes. Vasily Nebenzia told a UN Security Council meeting called by Ukraine that the soldier was a high-ranking Ukrainian nationalist, with a lot of neo-Nazi accomplices attending. Below are your comments. Always twisting the truth and saying the most ridiculous things. It's crazy making if you try to have a rational conversation with them. Gaslamping is another term. Russia doing whatever inhumane thing they want to do and then explaining it away with the weirdest cognitive dissonance you've ever heard. It's a shame that Ukraine can't bomb whatever it feels like. I respect them for not targeting civilians, but it's a shame that their civilians are being bleeped every day. Nebenzia reiterated that the Russian military doesn't target civilians and civilian facilities. This man is nothing but despicable. So, he confessed of a war crime. Congratulations. It is not just me noticed, the Russian internet is actively discussing the confession. Russia is clearly a pariah state, run by gluttonous mafia who care about no one but their selfish elves. What a country. Next news. EU reviews aid for Palestinians, reversing earlier freeze. Bloomberg. The European Union said late Monday that it's urgently reviewing the bloc's assistance to the Palestinians after several member states protested an earlier announcement that aid would be suspended. Most read from Bloomberg Israel latest. Top U.S. general warns Iran to stay out of conflict. Schumer confronts Xi on Israel-Hamas stance in rare meeting. A fractured Israel unites around a singular goal. Crush the enemy. Bank of America's wrong way rate bet hurts Moynihan's growth pledge. Israel. Below are your comments. Yeah, well, the EU really needs to send another $500 billion to the Palestinians for so-called humanitarian aid, most of which will be used to buy more missiles aimed at Israel. It's no surprise that peace is such a hard thing to achieve. There are so many different levels of opinion when it comes to this situation. It's like everyone makes a good case, so no one knows what to do. If Israel's leaders would stop being stubborn and accept some responsibility, then progress. WOU. The EU is complicit if they send aid. That money is covered in blood now. Well done, EU. If EU thinks that something can go trough Gaza Strip, they are wrong. Will be a complete blackout there. Anyone sending 1 penny to these career terrorists is just as guilty as those animals are. Gaza needs to be flattened so there is no one left to send weapon money to. Next news. Tim Scott blames Joe Biden for ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict at Greenville campaign stop. Greenville News. Scott said the Biden administration exacerbated the conflict with a $6 billion funding to Iran. Below are your comments. Instead of just blaming Joe Biden, why doesn't Tim Scott offer his or the GOP's peace plan for Israel and the Palestinians? Criticizing does not cost anything. Actually, governing is something else. But then the GOP seems bent on sowing chaos and criticism, rather than governing. It's still apparent. This uninformed man is a joke. The conflict there has been going on from the day the UN voted for separation, creating the State of Israel. Not exactly a secret. Another politician living in alternate reality. We have doled out billions, I would guess, trying to solve a situation neither side won. Biden is a large part of the problem as he has weak leadership. Pulling out of the Middle East, getting Americans bleep, and leaving billions of dollars worth of equipment and ammunition behind not only destabilized the Middle East but also helped arm terrorists. He and his GOP House buddies should concentrate on getting their house in order with a speaker instead of blabbing about international politics, about which he and they know nothing. The standard Republican strategy: no ideas on how to help the average American citizens, only Democrats are bad. Next news. Palestinian president asks UN for help with Israeli aggression in Gaza. The Hill. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called on the United Nations to help stop the Israeli aggression in Gaza, state media reported Monday. In a call with UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, Abbas reportedly asked the UN to immediately intervene to stop the ongoing Israeli aggression, Palestinian news agency WAFA reported Monday night. Abbas urged Guterres and the. Below are your comments. This is rich. Although Gaza is not made up all Hamas constituents, the current government did nothing to prevent them or derail their organization. They are complicit by their inactions. In the conflict there are civilian casualties on both sides. But there is a difference. The Palestinians try to increase civilian casualties and Israeli decrease civilian casualties. The Palestinians target civilians and Israelis don't. The Palestinians celebrate civilian casualties and Israelis. This is the problem with both sides in the conflict. In any conflict, the belief that the other side is fully to blame. For Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to not own up to what Hamas did is essentially condoning it. Hamas will cease to exist, and Gaza citizens will unfortunately pay the price for Hamas decisions. The tables are turned now. You don't call for the UN unless you are losing. Next news. The White House and lawmakers weigh linking Ukraine and Israel aid. NBC News. Washington. The Biden administration and key lawmakers in Congress are actively discussing whether aid to Israel could be linked to more funding for Ukraine as a strategy to pass both spending priorities, according to an administration official and two pro-Ukraine Republican lawmakers. Below are your comments. Good thing the vast majority of Americans are well armed, and could put up a good fight if this happens. And in the U.S., because our border is wide open and the Uniparty in Washington clearly expects Americans to fend for themselves, because they spend the money on other countries. No more money for Ukraine. We need to stop spending money we don't have. $33 trillion deficit. Someone needs to stand up and say enough. Zelensky has become personally enriched. He can use that, and go to EU. Right now, Israel is at stake. Ukraine proves to have a long shelf life. Israel is the stability of the Middle East and Africa. YCH has a growing separate alliance with Russia and China in the endeavor of making the. Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas, Netanyahu told his Likud party's Knesset members in March 2019. This is part of our strategy. Next news. A fractured Israel unites around a singular goal: crush the enemy. Bloomberg. The normally bustling streets of Tel Aviv are empty, schools shut, flights cancelled and a major G.S. field closed. Men of all ages are getting called to their reserve units, hundreds of thousands throwing on uniforms. Most read from Bloomberg. Israel latest. Top U.S. general warns Iran to stay out of conflict. Schumer confronts Xi on Israel-Hamas stance in rare Meeting a fractured Israel unites around a singular goal. Crush the enemy Bank of America's wrong way rate bet hurts Moynihan's GR. Below are your comments. Theater nukes. The U.S. needs to stay out of this and let the IDF do what should been done decades ago. Maybe the squad should head over and help Hamas. 70% plus or minus of Jewish Americans voted for Joe Biden. Now there are two wars going on and one can't help but wonder if those voters are still glad their GUI was elected. The oldest Palestinians still hold their original Jordanian passports. Drive them all back to Jordan where they belong. Netanyahu has always relied on things like this, and his perennial fearmongering of Iran, to consolidate the support of Israelis. Which is why I don't buy the story about Israeli intelligence being caught off guard. They have their thumb on the pulse of Gaza, and considering the logistics, Next news. UN airs concerns for civilians as Israel steps up military response in Gaza to deadly Hamas attacks. Associated Press. The United Nations, aid groups and public health experts expressed growing concerns Monday about humanitarian needs in Palestinian areas as Israel ratchets up a muscular military riposte and a lockdown of Gaza, after the weekend attack by Hamas militants who bleep and kidnapped hundreds of civilians. In Israel, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres led the clarion call, endeavoring to put the focus on civilians in both Israel and Gaza and renewing his condemnation of the fatalities and hashtag. Below are your comments. How can it be that the Gazans lacked the resources and access to obtain needed medical supplies? They clearly had the resources and ability to obtain weapons and rockets? Liberate Palestinians by destroying Hamas. Gaza civilians? They're being used as human shields by Hamas. They'll be fine. They voted for Hamas to rule Gaza back in 2007, remember? Where was he when jihadists slaughtered 260 innocent people in that border town? And now gutters should be asking who was really behind the attack and who should be punished for it. The prisoner's dilemma is a way to find out for sure. Hamas brass must tell the UN who ordered the attack. Next news. Hamas official says Iran and Hezbollah had no role in Israel incursion but they'll help if needed. Associated Press. A senior Hamas official on Monday said only a small number of top commanders inside Gaza knew about the wide-ranging incursion launched into Israel, but that allies like Iran and the Lebanese Hezbollah will join the battle if Gaza is subjected to a war of annihilation. Ali Baraka, a member of Hamas exiled leadership, spoke to the Associated Press in his Beirut office as Israel bombarded Gaza and vowed a total blockade of the Hamas-ruled territory. The surprise attack on Saturday caught ISR. Below are your comments. An army, Hamas, that hides behind hostages or civilians isn't much of an army, rather ordinary terrorist Regardless, they'll soon know the wrath of the IDF. Please wait a moment. A Hamas diplomat is also sworn to the death of every Israeli. He sees any lie he tells as justified that results in the death of Israelis. Historical land of Philistines was an area smaller and with maybe 1/100th the population of present-day Gaza. They consisted of 5 nomadic tribes of Bedouin. The US and Israel must make a formal declaration of war against Iran and all Iranian proxies. I demand this as a US citizen. Hezbollah fired rockets simultaneously. I would say they had a role. Next news. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running for president as an independent. Bloomberg. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the scion of one of America's most prominent Democratic families, is dropping out of the race for the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination and instead running as a third-party candidate. Most read from Bloomberg. Israel latest. Top U.S. general warns Iran to stay out of conflict. Schumer confronts Xi on Israel-Hamas stance in rare meeting. A fractured Israel unites around a singular goal. Crush the enemy. Bank of America's wrong way rate bet hurts Moynihan's growth. Below are your comments. Future President Kennedy, please run as an independent. You got my vote and millions like me. We need a good change. Both Biden and Trump are too old and way too much baggage. I think it is high time we expanded the political landscape to have more than 2 parties. Democrats and Republicans have become too comfortable and corrupt, and we need to put their feet to fire. Sounds about right. He's all alone. I'm voting for RFK, Jr. I wrote to the DNC and RNC telling both to field fresh candidates. I will not cast a vote for Trump, Biden, Harris, or Pence. A disappointing man proving he is not worth his namesake. Next news. Massachusetts pro-Palestinian protesters desecrate U.S. flag, call America legit gangsters. Fox News. Protesters in Massachusetts desecrated the U.S. flag and blamed Israel and America for the terrorist attacks by Iran-backed Hamas over the weekend. Below are your comments. This is where they need to take caution. Being in America, stepping on our American flag, and with a lot of proud veterans. Take caution. Never understood why any flag could become a target. A flag does not represent only the country and its government, but also the people. An insult to a flag is an insult to the whole nation. Don't they realize that by desecrating the U.S. flag they are also insulting themselves? I always thought it is a good thing I was not there, as I would have knocked them both off the flag and rescued it. P. Aroid. Hey, guess what? I do pretty well, and I would be happy to donate some cash to ensure that these poor unfortunate people La could be repatriated to Gaza to see their terrorist friends. Of course, it would be a one-way ticket. I do not understand why people who do not like this country stay here. Next news. Israel latest. Top U.S. general warns Iran to stay out of conflict. Bloomberg. U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the first tranche of a security aid package for Israel was already on the way and that additional assistance would be announced soon. Kirby added that the U.S. wanted to press ahead with diplomacy to normalize ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel after the Hamas attack, which further inflamed tensions in the Middle East. Most read from Bloomberg. Israel latest. Top U.S. general warns Iran to stay out of conflict. Schumer confronts Xi. Below are your comments. Iran is financing the war, and are lying. We all know they are directly involved, and the United States fell for it. What the hell China has to do with Israel conflicts? Stop involve the whole world. Schumer. Of course, that's not counting all the dead civilians in the apartment buildings Israel's leveling. I think Iran probably has an atomic bomb by now, and they're itching to use it. Hope someone has some intelligence about that. We as a nation on the brink of World War III, and they push a Marxist in to oversee our military. Next news. Hamas attack on Israel prompts South Korea to consider pausing military agreement with North Korea. Associated Press. South Korea's defense minister said Tuesday he would push to suspend a 2018 inter-Korean military agreement in order to resume frontline surveillance on rival North Korea, as the surprise attack on Israel by Hamas militants raised concerns in South Korea about similar assaults by the North. The agreement, reached during a brief period of diplomacy between South Korea's former Liberal President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, created buffer zones along land and sea-bound horizon. Below are your comments. Calm down, it's not the same thing. The Rock is not occupying a land and subjugating it people. Any agreement with Kim Jong-un to reduce the tension is nothing but a false security. Hamas attack on Israel prompts South Korea to consider pausing military agreement with North Korea. What Korea is doing is nothing but provocation to the North. We have to remember that the civil has not ended yet. A truce was agreed. Thousands of rocket-firing structures and mobile units are POW. Next news. McConnell calls for allies to impose new severe sanctions against Iran. The Hill. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, RKY, is calling for new severe sanctions against Iran in response to attacks carried out by Hamas fighters against Israeli civilians over the weekend. U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Jonathan Feiner said early Monday that Iran was broadly complicit in the Hamas attack on Israel over the weekend, and Below are your comments. America, always the sane voice of escalation and war. McConnell must be trying to maximize Mike profits for the year. Tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy. McConnell calls for allies to impose new severe sanctions against Iran. I don't think there is anything left to sanction that relates to Iran. Magoo, like the last 50 years, misses the point. Tell the turtle his appeasement of Israel's land grab and apartheid led to this. Nothing more, and like a typical political ad lies. Washington sanctions are a joke. North Korea got the bomb. Russia is still bleep Ukrainians. China is executing their own people, and now Iran will have one. It needs to destroy us. You people in Washington are worthless. Next news. U.S. senators seek to pass annual aid package for Ukraine worth between $50 billion United States dollars and $100 United States dollars billion. On WSJ. Ukrainska Pravda. U.S. senators from both parties intend to pass an annual aid package for Ukraine worth between $50 billion United States dollars billion and $100 billion United States dollars in the coming weeks. Source: The Wall Street Journal. Details. Pro-Ukrainian senators from both parties, shaken by the upheaval in the House of Representatives, saw why they are eager to promptly pass a one-year aid package for the war-torn country that is far greater than the amount of aid President Biden has requested. Below are your comments. Take that money and give back to the seniors here in America. No more. End this war. Peace. What Americans don't realize is that the billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars is being sent over there to fund Ukraine's social security and welfare programs and paying the salaries of 57,000 Ukraine workers, even after Zelensky has acknowledged that the Ukrainian government is corrupt. How about no? Exclamation mark. Where is our aid? Stop giving out resources away when we can't even help ourselves first. Next news. Russia faces a tough fight to regain its seat in the UN's top human rights body. Associated Press. Russia faces a tough fight to regain a seat in the UN's premier human rights body in Tuesday's election in the General Assembly, which voted last year to suspend Moscow after its invasion of Ukraine. The 193-member assembly will be electing 15 members to the Geneva-based Human Rights Council, with candidates put forward by the UN's 5 regional groups. Russia is competing against Albania and Bulgaria for 2 seats allotted to the East European region L Group, and Moscow's UN ambassador. Below are your comments. Russia does not deserve a seat at the table, as they are one of the worst violators when it comes to human rights. They should be expelled from the UN altogether. If the foxes are going to be voted into the henhouse, why should we fund such a ridiculous farce? No Russia when we talk about human rights! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Ukraine refused Russians' right to head their country in 2013 and before the invasion they were still ostracized. Next news. Ukraine war latest. Russia provides Hamas with Western weapons captured in Ukraine, Kyiv says. Kyiv Independent. Russia has transferred Western-made weapons captured in Ukraine to Hamas extremists fighting against Israel, Ukraine's military intelligence, HER, reported on October. Moscow plans to falsely accuse the Ukrainian military of selling weaponry provided by the US and EU to Hamas, according to the military intelligence. Below are your comments. Ukraine propaganda never reported that Russia had captured Western weapon. Why all of a sudden Ukraine propaganda begun to talk about this? So I guess that means if they do check the serial numbers of some of those weapons they will find THEY were from Ukraine. I thought that Russia was desperate for weapons. Why would they be giving any away to Hamas? Kiev Independent, that says it all. Yahoo should be sued for publishing this kind of garbage. Nice try, Mr. Z. Russia itself is asking North Korea for arms, but giving them to Hamas? Next news. Graham. Biden should light up White House with Israeli flag. The Hill. Lindsey Graham, RSC, called on President Biden on Monday to light up the White House with the Israeli flag, arguing it was important to do so after that attack on Israel by Hamas. I'm urging the world to condemn Iran. I'm urging the Biden administration to cloak the White House tonight in the Israeli. Below are your comments. Couldn't be a better and clearer proof that U.S. is practically ruled by the Jewish people. Israel is a valued ally of the USA, but it's not part of the USA, right? Another brilliant idea from Miss Lindsay. Another Israeli mummy in our capital who promotes wars and deaths of our troops for his sponsors Cree. Minal agenda in the ME. Taxpayers need to dump him in 2024. Graham. Biden should light up White House with Israeli flag. It should be illegal to light up the White House with the flag of another country. It is utterly amazing how little the government of the USA cares for the USA. Next news. Washington Post. White House considers attaching Ukraine funding to Israel aid package. Kyiv Independent. The White House is considering a strategy to bundle Ukraine funding with a forthcoming request for urgent aid to Israel. People familiar with the discussions told the Washington Post. Below are your comments. Desperate for those campaign kickbacks, zero more cash, until we can account for it. $2 billion in U.S. taxpayer aid found its way into FTX weeks before its collapse. Pure politics. Biden won't let go of his 10%. That's just dirty. They didn't do that with Taiwan this summer and they won't going forward. He is already on drawdown number 47. Why stop now when he can just hand out defense stockpiles like they are candy? By the way, between 2011 to 2015, there were about 13 presidential drawdowns. And, at 47, he's just. It's not going to happen if there is no Speaker of the House. Nothing will be passed until someone is voted into that position. Next news. Biden officials say $6 billion in Iran funds untouched amid attack on Israel. CBS News. After Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, Republicans were quick to link, without evidence, the assault to the $6 billion in funds that were unfrozen as part of the prisoner swap between the U.S. and Iran. Below are your comments. If I had $1,000 set aside to pay my rent and someone wrote a check that could only go to my landlord for the rent, I'd still have $1,000 extra now to spend on whatever I want. The Iranians don't need that money. When Biden shut down U.S. oil production, the price went up. When Biden stopped sanctions against Iran, the Iranians were able to make billions from selling oil to China. Now they are flush with money. We can see how they are spending it. Biden officials say no border crisis, inflation, looting. More lies from the Biden admin. I wonder how long it will take them to try to blame Trump for this. Let me see. Next news. Russia loses another 450 soldiers, 6 tanks and air defense system in a day. Ukrainska Pravda. The defenders of Ukraine bleep around 450 Russian invaders and destroyed 6 tanks, 3 armored combat vehicles, 7 artillery systems and an air defense system belonging to the Russians over the course of the 9th of October. Below are your comments. This is good news and I'm proud of these valiant Ukrainians. But at the same time they did this, how many bombs has Russia dropped in Ukraine? We, NATO, need to give them missiles that they can send into Russia to send a message to them that they aren't the only country who can do the bombing. Please wait a moment. Ukraine has the right stuff. Afghanistan sadly did not, and so it goes. As Putin eating, drinking well in his mansion, whom cares little about his people? He reminds me of our nuclear secrets selling orange face cult leader exploding head blew it. The orc grinders are still doing their job of swallowing orcs and their weapons. Next news. How Republicans are trying to blame Biden for the attacks on Israel. CNN. The U.S. government is not yet willing to draw a direct line between Iran and the shocking sneak attack. KS by Hamas militants on Israel outside the Gaza Strip, but President Joe Biden's domestic political rivals are convinced. Below are your comments. Republicans have forgotten who was president when Marines' barracks was blown up in Lebanon and who was president when 9/11 happened. If Republicans did their job, they wouldn't have to blame Democrats. If you're going to assign blame, why not blame Netanyahu? The bottom line is he is the commander-in-chief, and as Truman said, the buck stops here. So you can blame the doorman at the Ritz or the order taker at McDonald's. But Biden is the man, like it or not, right or wrong. Why would Biden finance a hit on Israel and then send billions of dollars in aid to help them after Arts? Doesn't make any sense. Next news. Vietnam-aligned hackers attempted to hack U.S. lawmakers and journalists. CNN. Hackers aligned with Vietnam tried to use social media platforms X and Facebook to install spyware in the phones of dozens of high-profile targets, including U.S. lawmakers, United Nations officials and CNN journalists, Amnesty International said Monday. Below are your comments. They probably heard just how much U.S. politicians waste taxpayer time yakking about stupid stuff like recipes, TV shows, grocery lists etc. That's okay. VN and India are friends. Spoiled by the US, and used for the tool to counter China. They can do whatever wanted, US government want. Say nothings. Why bother? Just dial 1-800-Mar-a-Lago. I would love to see us go back to Vietnam and make that place a parking lot once and for all. Quick, tell Joe Biden about it. He'll be overjoyed to learn that his TikTok has a little playmate. Next news. Pakistan's UN Human Rights Council member fails to honor Israelis bleeped by Hamas in moment of silence. NCE. Fox News. A member of the United Nations Human Rights Council omitted the Israeli lives lost when calling for a moment of silence to honor those who died in Israeli attacks on Palestinians. Below are your comments. Pakistan? Danny Pearl's bleepers are heroes there. So is Osama, who they tried to protect from us. Pakistan on the UN Human Rights Council. Bahahaha. That is the UN. Pakistan, the poorest country in the world. The Middle East and their dictators have 2,000 plus years of bleep their own and governing through oppression, scion and misogyny. They are truly barbarians and behind civilization. The West needs to stop placating them in any way. Ban all immigration from Iran, Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Saudi Arabia. Pakistan. Just another trash country. Next news. Air Force. Strike drones headed toward southern Ukraine. Kyiv Independent. Russia has launched several waves of attack drones toward Ukraine this evening, a group of which are headed in the direction of Odessa and Mykolaiv oblasts, Ukraine's Air Force reported on Telegram on October. Below are your comments. The drones were launched from the Black Sea. I thought the Russian fleet left the area? October 10, 2023 RIA Novosti. The fascists of the Ukrainian armed forces have again struck at the civilian infrastructure of Donetsk. The Armed Forces of Ukraine, AFU, shelled Donetsk. A woman was injured in the Kirovsky district. This was reported on October 9 at the representative office of the October 10, 2023 RIA Novosti. The Ministry of Defense told about new heroic deeds and exploits of the Russian military. Next news. Russian UN representative claims high-ranking nationalists present at Hroza funeral implies responsibility or deadly strike. Kyiv Independent. Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations Vasily Nebenzia implied Russia's responsibility for strike on the village of Hroza in Kharkiv Oblast on October 5, while speaking at a UN Security Council meeting on October 5. Below are your comments. The UN is a joke. Allowing Russia to even participate. Nebenzia would make a great spy. He has a pre-blurred face which no security camera could ever capture. The inevitable Russian lie. All the Russians are trying to do is cover themselves. This was outright bleep of innocent people. Ukraine was criticized by the UN about a year ago for using their own civilians as human shields, so draw your conclusions. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.